got to know when to hold up, know when to fold up, know when to walk away.
Know when to walk away. This song is dedicated to Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama, who, if they had any shame, they would have resigned today. But as you well know, politicians, especially liberal politicians, have no shame because they have no reality. Liberalism is a mental disorder. The question today is, what did the burning of the embassies in the Middle East and the Occupy movement have in common? The answer is quite straightforward. Obama and Hillary Clinton, both of whom supported both. Make no mistake about it, these are the friends of Hillary who are setting the Middle East on fire. These are the friends of Barack Obama who are setting the Middle East on fire. These are the people who were liberated by Hillary and Obama. If they had any decency, they would have resigned today instead of using the caskets of the dead for political gain. Welcome to the Savage Nation. It's Open Mic to Mike Friday. Yay, 1-800-449-8255. But don't fear, America's pride will be saved by Barack as soon as the campaign is over. He said today, no act of terror will go unpublished. He means, of course, any act of terror by an American citizen. And by an act of terror, he means any criticism of himself. And, of course, he then added this, no act of violence shakes the resolve of the United States of America. Duh. What are the warships doing there? What are the drones for? What are the B-1 bombers for? What is this all about? Answer, nothing. Paper tiger. You see, the American voter is the most naive and the most overeducated and naive voter in the the Western world. They know almost nothing about politics. They think D and R, tell them everything they need to know. D good, R bad. Or R good, D bad. That's all they need to know. That's their entire lexicon. D, R, Obama good, Romney bad. See, the thing is the Europeans know that Obama's a communist, socialist, anarchist. However you want to put it, we know he's not an American, that's for sure. Unless you want to put him in the category of Americans who hate the country, then I would disagree with myself. Berlin, Der Spiegel, significant newspaper, headline, Obama's Middle East policy is in ruins. Everyone knows it except Wolf Blitzer with the fake eyeglasses. Now, the most astonishing thing to me is that the Middle East is burning. This is the Middle East that Obama has created. It's his Arab Frankenstein. Yes, I created the phrase Arab winter. You know that a year ago when I told you about trickle-down tyranny. I told you that would be a key point in it. I told you the Arab Spring never existed. I said you cannot have a spring. They have lived in the dark ages so long, you can't jump them to a spring. You can't jump steps. It's like taking an infant and saying, here are the keys to the car, go drive it. They don't know how to drive a car. They don't even know what a key is. How do they drive the car of democracy if they don't know what a key is? They don't even know where to put the key. They may as well dip it into a popsicle and suck it. So they set the car on fire because they say the American car is no good. They won't admit they don't know how to drive a car because they never learned the first stages of democracy. They have no respect for themselves, no respect for others, no respect for the dignity of man, no respect for women, no respect for any minorities, no respect for any other religion but Islam. How can they have been given the keys to the car of self-governance? It's impossible. And yet, the academic eggheads gave them the keys to the car. And guess what happened? This poor guy, this do-gooder, this nice liberal ambassador was actually on the ship that brought weapons to these revolutionaries. He was one of them. He was like in the Occupy movement. He was a do-gooder, an anthropologist type who thought the third world is better than anything in the first world, who was sure that people in the Arab world knew more about life and reality than any American could ever know. And so he devoted his life to those in Tunisia and Libya, devoted himself to the boys in tight jeans with Blackberries who excited Anderson Cooper. All of the boys on Tahrir Square who had the tight jeans and the Blackberries. Why, Anderson Cooper was sure, positive, that this represented the real McCoy. Why, it was just like, Berkeley. It was like the free speech movement at Berkeley. And if only they were liberated from the evil Mubarak, why then, well, I don't know, things would flower in the Middle East. At least that's what they thought, because that's as far as their minds could take them. And of course, as you know, the opposite turned out to be true. So for Obama and Hillary to give a somber tribute today and so-called lay them to rest is nauseating. Now, you could argue that this should end Obama's campaign. You could argue that this explosion in the Middle East would end any other president's campaign. It would be over. The problem is you have a media that is so out of control with regard to its propagandist elements. And the worst, of course, I don't know whether it's a tie between the shill on CNN, who is one of the most despicable people I've ever seen in my life. Wolf Blitzer is in a tie with the More Snotty Nonsense by Chicks channel for more of a slavish worshiper of the failed policies of Obama. Instead of talking about the Middle East burning, they continue to talk with a snicker about Romney, who made some tepid remarks shortly after the explosions. Shortly after the ambassador was killed, Romney muttered something mild. They make it sound like he caused it's a bigger story to them than the actual Middle East explosions. So you have to ask yourself, I'm trying to explain to you why. How did they get away with it? In other words, how do the lowbrows, how do the throwbacks, how do the pseudos on MSNBC get away with this naked stupidity? You would say, surely there's an adult somewhere around who would say to them, look, guys, you can be a liberal, but show some sense. You can be a liberal, but put things in context, because we have no credibility anywhere in the world anymore. This is not the college anymore. You're no longer on campus. Show some adult. But you wouldn't expect that from Phil Griffin. Here's a man running so scared he doesn't even know where he was yesterday, doesn't know where he's going to sleep tonight. Why is Phil Griffin, who runs MSNBC, permitting these juveniles to do this on MSNBC? The answer is because his boss is Jeffrey Immelt. Jeffrey Immelt, in my opinion, is the reason that these juveniles continue to do it, is because GE, you see, pays no income taxes on their revenue here in America. You got to remember, this is all about money. So since General Electric doesn't want to pay any income tax, Obama said to them, here, Jeffrey, here's the game. If you use the juveniles on MSNBC to become promoters of me and my policies, and you let them do it around the clock, and they never criticize me, I'll make sure you never pay any income taxes for General Electric. That's my analysis. But they're not the only company who is not paying any income taxes. I list 15 such companies in my great Bible, Trickle-Down Tyranny, but I'm giving you an example of how this goes on. If you study this, you say this can't be true. How could grown people who pose as commentators get up there while the Middle East is burning and attack Romney when he had nothing to do with it? All they did was mutter some criticism of the king. I thought we lived in a democracy. What do you want to do, live in China? You want to live in China where you can't criticize the premier of China? Like in communist China? You think communist China is no longer a communist country? Well, that's another story for another day. What are they saying in Berlin? In Berlin, they're saying Obama's Middle East policy is in ruins. I'll read you three little quotes from three newspapers. The center-right newspaper, Frankfurter Allgemeine Zeitung, writes this: the deeply held American belief that all you have to do is liberate people from serfdom and dictatorship, and then democracy and a market economy will develop more or less on their own, burned to ash in the trial by fire of Iraq. Deeply ingrained cultural attitudes do not change simply because one political regime replaces another. In the long process of building a democratic society, they say, it is not possible to simply skip stages. Don't tell that to Barry Obama. Don't tell that to Hillary Clinton. Don't tell that to any of the fools in the Occupy movement who are on MSNBC and CNN. What does the center-left daily, Süddeutsche Zeitung, writes? Süddeutsche Zeitung, what do they say over there in the center-left daily, Süddeutsche Zeitung? What do they write? Süddeutsche, that's the southern German Zeitung. What do they write? Since the Arab Spring broke out, there have been many difficult moments in the relationships between America and the Arab nations. America hardly has influence in the region any longer, and now sees itself confronted with anti-American sentiment in places where it no longer controls the dictators. Now, that's a left-wing newspaper which has self-respect and intellectuals who understand the world. They're not talking about Romney. They're not talking about a stupid movie on the internet. They're talking about what actually happened, which is that Obama's idiotic policies blew up in his academic face. What does the conservative Die Welt write in Germany? Quote, U.S. President Barack Obama's Middle East policy is in ruins. Obama was naive to believe that one only needed to adopt a new tone and show more respect in order to dispel deep-seated reservations about the free world. One thing is clear. If jihadists believe they can attack American installations and kill an ambassador on the anniversary of September 11th, then America's deterrent power has declined considerably. For a superpower is not enough just to want to be loved. You have to scare the bad guys to keep them in check. How do you like that one? There are other comments coming out of Europe that, although they vary from left-wing to right-wing, they have a dignity to them, they have an intellect to them. Most importantly, they have a reality ring to them. Here in America, there's almost no reality in the American media. With the exception of my show and a few other radio shows and a few outlets on the internet, there is no reality left in the media. It has become one gigantic merry-go-round of support for Obama. And if anyone criticizes the king, they are rudely attacked by the vermin on the left who, frankly, do not deserve their positions of authority and power. I'll be right back.
Savage.
Look, I'm a cynic by nature. I've been a cynic since I'm 6 years old, and I'm not enamored of the political class. Let's put it to you that way. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. I'm an outsider looking in. But when I see Obama and Hillary Clinton trying to act somber around those caskets, I get sick. I get angry. Do you know where Hillary Clinton was while our ambassador to Libya was being killed? Hillary Clinton was in the Cook Islands in Micronesia, being danced to by locals in traditional grass skirts. She was on a world tour for the last month, polishing up her pageantry and symbolism, thinking she'd be the next whatever. Where was Obama? On another fundraising venture or playing golf. Nobody knows where he was. Do you know what Obama's chief diplomat said of the Libya attack? Do you want to hear how incompetent, how out of touch these academic eggheads are? He said, I asked myself, how could this happen? How could this happen in a country we help liberate, in a city we help save from destruction? These are academic fanatics, left-wing fanatics who don't know the world that they live in. They engineered getting elected. They put in the most incompetent president in American history, the most divisive, incompetent, despotic, unconstitutional in history. Constitutional experts call Obama's abuse of power historic. I won't go into the details. The man is a mini dictator. And if he's not controlled, he'll become a full-blown dictator. But the fact of the matter is, there are millions, if not hundreds of millions of people in the Arab world who share the vision of bin Laden. And no matter how many times you apologize to them, no matter how many idiotic diplomats you send over there who think that they're wonderful because they went to Berkeley, one thing is clear. They only understand power, and they see that you're weak. They see that you are weak. Left-leaning, the Tageszeitung in Germany says, instead of the Financial Daily, Handelsblatt writes, 3 years after Obama's speech in Cairo, which was supposed to initiate a new beginning in the Middle East, the United States now has even less support in the region than before. The mass circulation Daily Bild in Germany writes, naked hatred is raging against the country that many people in the world regard as a symbol of freedom. When U.S. flags burn, embassies are vandalized, and diplomats are murdered, it is an attack on the West and not just America. We rooted for the demonstrators at Tahrir Square, and many of us have longed to see democracy in the Arab nations. But democracy includes honoring the lives of fellow humans. You know that they can't honor the lives of fellow humans, especially infidels. They used Obama. They used Hillary. They used the ambassador to get where they are, and then they killed them. Then they burnt the embassy. So now you're going to hear liberals wringing their hands, as they've done in America for the last 40, 50 years, when there are riots here, and say, oh, the young people are angry. They're disenfranchised. We failed them. We didn't give them enough. We gave them an Arab Spring, but we didn't do enough. We didn't give them a stimulus to go with it. Everyone should have been given a Chevy Volt in Libya. I mean, had we only given everyone in Libya a Chevy Volt with perhaps, a cooked turkey. Well, it couldn't be cooked because there's no refrigeration. Let's say a Chevy Volt with unlimited charging capacity at a U.S.-provided plug-in station by Obama, followed up with food stamps, U.S. food stamps that they could redeem at a local Arby's or KFC for free chicken legs or free roast beef sandwich. Well, then maybe they wouldn't have rioted. They could be hungry. These could just be young Arabs who are hungry. Now that they're free after all those years of doing nothing but milling about demanding freedom, they're hungry. They're hungrier than ever. Maybe they should have been given a free chicken wing or a free Arby's roast beef sandwich, and maybe that's why they burnt it down. I think that the liberals are seeing it correctly. This is a hungry, hungry group over there in Libya and Egypt. And if only the liberals had done more. I think the system has failed them. If you look at it from the liberal point of view, the hand-wringing from the university crowd in the Obama administration, why, they failed these poor young revolutionaries. They're tired. They're hungry. And most of them are poor. They're not different than our immigrants, poor, tired, and hungry. Maybe we should bring them over here. I think America should bring in, let's say, 30 million Arabs from Libya and Egypt in order to diversify America even more and put them ahead of the line for police jobs, fire jobs, teaching jobs, put them into government, put them in the motor vehicle bureau, put them in voting booths. That's when you will see the Arab world really love us. I think that's what we need to do, is bring 30 million of them over here. You know, bring them over with affirmative action.
Savage.
You want my opinion? It's easy to bellyache about all of this, saying, well, okay, Big Shot, what would you do if you were president? I'll make it simple. I'd pull all the troops out of the Middle East. I'd close all emissions in the Middle East. I'd close them down. And I would immediately authorize the Keystone XL pipeline to bring oil in from Canada. How's that for an answer? Does that work for you? Why is Romney not making an issue of the fact that Obama cut off a possibility of massive amounts of oil coming in from Canada? Why? What's wrong with Romney? Well, that's an old story. He's too weak. He is too Christian in the sense of turning the other cheek. He's too passive. He's scared, in other words. He has advisors who are undermining him. He's got people who voted for Obama who are advising him. He's a fall guy for the administration that wants to be reelected. And they picked a patsy to run against. He's like a Joe Palooka bop bag in my day, something you bought that you kept punching, and it never hit back. This was not a group of young people who are angry about a Quran film or about Muhammad. Nothing to do with it. Do you remember that Cairo where our embassy is burning and where an American flag burned? Do you remember what Obama did there? That was the epicenter of Obama's apology tour. Do you remember it? It was right there in Cairo that Obama apologized for steps that American officials took in the Middle East to defend against the Soviets 8 years before Obama was born. It was right there that Obama criticized America's response to 9/11. Do you remember the apology tour? Do you remember what U.S. diplomats in Cairo put out immediately after those buildings started to burn? They said that we're apologizing for those who hurt the religious feelings of Muslims. That's the academic egghead view of the world. Hillary, of course, lied again or got it wrong. It's hard to tell which is which with her. She said the attack in the beginning was the result of a small and savage group. Wrong. No, it's not again the same lie about 9/11. No, it's not a small and savage group. This is Islamist political ideology. This ideology defines terrorist groups from around the world, whether they be the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, the Haqqani Network in Afghanistan and Pakistan, the Al-Shabaab in Somalia, the Boko Haram in Nigeria, the Jemaah Islamiyah in Indonesia. They all have the same worldview. They hate America. They hate freedom. They want women in burqas. Do you understand what we're dealing with here? These are Islamists. They're murderers. They're never going to be part of the human family in your lifetime. Never. Most American people know this. Most American people understand this, but the political class doesn't understand this. The political class, both parties, keep referring to these animals as violent extremists, as if they're not part of the tapestry of radical Islam. They are radical Islam. The fact of the matter is we've done nothing. Nothing. The ambassador was killed. It's an act of war. We did nothing. See, it's a helpless giant again. It's sad. It makes me sick because I'm a product of a long period of time in American history. I've seen many things happen in my lifetime. I'm not a child. Many of you who know my show know I've been on the air 18 years, and you know that I'm a man of a certain age. I may sound more youthful than I am, and I'm probably more youthful than most 30-year-olds. But when I was a little boy, I go back, if you can believe this. Now that I think about it, I'm afraid to say it. I was a small child when Harry Truman dropped 2 atomic bombs on Japan, which means I was an infant when FDR was president, which means that I grew up in the great age of Dwight D. Eisenhower when we had a war hero as president, as opposed to a community organizer whose last known job was shooting staples and posters into a telephone pole. So I still see the world from the point of view of American triumph and American strength. And I keep trying to hold on to that dream. But then along came the hippie generation. Along came the drug epidemic. Along came the degenerates in the media who undermined the country's will and mind and heart and soul with LSD and with other drugs like the most dangerous of all, marijuana, which undermined tens of millions of people to becoming sort of like a nutty putty. Don't really care about anything. They just want to feel good. They don't have any identity. They have no identity in sense of... See, these drugs destroy one's ego and therefore destroy one's identity. You know, I've talked about drugs a lot. I've never put it in the context of politics. You say, drugs are bad, but you don't quite understand what I'm talking about. I'll explain it to you right now in a minute or less. What is the drug epidemic in America, which started in the late 50s, Jack Kerouac, etc., glorifying On the Road? You know, I loved his writing. But what did it really do to the psyche of America? And what does it have to do with Obama and the Middle East burning and us being a paper tiger? It has a lot to do with it. When a person smokes marijuana, it attacks their ego. It dissolves their ego, which, of course, the liberal credo says it's good to let go of your ego. Well, is it? Is it good to let go of something that defines you? Well, when you let go of your ego and you let go of that which defines you, you also let go of your self-identity. Therefore, you have no identity. Therefore, the nation has no borders. The nation has no identity. And so we have millions, tens of millions of people in this country, most of whom, many of whom work in the Obama administration, who grew up without a self-identity, sort of an amorphous individual, where their own nation didn't exist to them. It wasn't real. There was no border with Mexico. Because they had no borders within themselves. They had no defined limits within themselves. If it feels good, do it. Why not do it in the road? Okay, so now you're a diplomat. And so therefore your country has no identity. Do you see how it goes from the personal to the political, and how the opposition is like an opportunistic infection, and how these fanatics in the Middle East see us as nothing but weak and they're overrunning us? They're overrunning us where they can, which is in the symbols of our embassies. But make no mistake about it, there are millions of them here in this country, thanks to Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, going back to Clinton, bringing in people. I see people walking around here with burqas, and I ask myself, how can this country survive? Now you say, well, that's racist. Well, then the whole country of France is racist. If what I just said is racist to you, then the entire nation of France is a racist country. France was a nation, is a nation that understood that human rights may be a universal right, but the identity of a nation is equally important to that nation. And you don't bring people in from the 15th century and let them dictate to you how you are going to see yourself in your own society. You don't let people come in and treat women like cattle. You say, no, you can't mutilate your women and cut off their private parts because it's written in some book somewhere. We're not letting you do it. You're going to go to jail. And you're not putting them in costumes from the 15th century, which are not even described in the Quran, incidentally. Many of you are so dumb, you think that burqas are described in the Quran. There's no reference to putting a woman in such a costume in the Quran. You understand any of this? And yet here the liberal says, oh, you're a racist if you don't let them mutilate their women. You're a racist if you don't let them put their women in burqas. Why? Because they have no self-identity. They don't respect themselves, the diplomats now, excuse me, the liberals. They don't have any respect for themselves. They have no knowledge of self. They have no defined edges in themselves. So therefore, the country has no definition. Therefore, there is no American culture. So therefore, every other culture is something they can glom onto. So if it's as extreme as a burqa and genital mutilation, that's good enough for them. So I've given you in 2 minutes or less a tour of the geography of the mind of the, a person without a nation called the American liberal. A person without a nation for whom every nation on earth is better than ours. That's Obama. Another man who really has an identity crisis. You may not know it. You say, how's that possible? He's so smart he became president. He is smart. He's ruthless. He's cunning. But I think he has a very severe identity crisis. I believe he is a product of his anthropology mother, who also had a contempt for America, a deep contempt for America, and it sort of washed off on the son. And he doesn't see America as exceptional. He doesn't see America as great. His wife, the first lady, said she was not proud of America until they made her husband the president. Then suddenly she was proud to drive an Air Force One and spend as much as she could on travels. But that's a separate story. Under Obama, the Islamists are doing very well. They've taken over Egypt. They're about to take over Syria with all of its chemical weapons. And we've done nothing. Soon we will be leaving Afghanistan. Obama told him that. And so as soon as we leave Afghanistan, what's going to happen then? Hillary doesn't know what's going on. She's engaged in pageantry, apologies, photo ops, dancing with the basket weavers of Samoa. They're all descendants, in essence, of the fraud Margaret Mead. They all read the fraudulent book, Coming of Age in Samoa, which is long known amongst serious anthropologists as a fraudulent view of sexuality in Samoa. And I'm speaking as a professional who knows very, very well what a fraud Margaret Mead was. But Margaret Mead's feminist view of wild and free sex in Samoa was not only an insult to Samoan people who don't behave that way and never behaved that way in traditional society, but it created a falsehood for Hillary and Barry, where they have a view of the third world that is not real. And so they think the third world is superior to our world. And now look where we are. The opportunistic infection of radical Islam is spreading like a wildfire through the Middle East or throughout the world. And they continue to bring them in here. Bringing them in more. How many of them do you think are in this country? And do you think Janet Napolitano is watching them or watching you? Who do you think Department of Homeland Security is watching more closely? The radical Islamists who have come into this country, both legally and illegally, or you, a returning war veteran, or you, an anti-abortionist, or you, an anti-huge government individual, or you, a member of a Tea Party? Tell me who you think they're watching. It's Alice in Wonderland. Everything is upside down under Obama, and you don't have to look any further than Libya. Is Libya burning? Yes, Mr. President. It's time to come off the basketball court. Is Libya burning? Yes, Miss Secretary. It's time to come home from the grass skirt tour in the Cook Islands. Is Cairo burning? Yes, Miss Secretary. It's time to look somber at a funeral. Yes, Mr. President, you have to leave Las Vegas now. Your fundraiser has to be put on hold, and you have to stand and look serious at the caskets today and give some kind of speech that you're going to hunt down and bring to justice, blah, 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 and then you can go back to another fundraiser tonight. Don't worry about it. We'll get you home in time to raise money in Connecticut at the home of Harvey Weinstein. And what goes on at this time? I read that, you know how I jokingly say Katzenberg, Matzenberg, and Ratzenberg in Hollywood, right? You know how I refer to them in that way. Do you know that one of them just raised $9.9 million for Obama? I forget which one of their names. It's not one of the Bergs. It's another wonderful gentleman from Hollywood who's got more money than God and has the foolishness to not understand who this man is. I have no idea what their love affair is with Obama. Other than, I guess it's just racism towards Romney. I think that's what it comes down to. It's almost a genetic hatred for Romney. It's not that they love Obama. They have a genetic hatred for Romney. I don't know how else to put it. You know, I'm way past the point in my life and in my professional career where I want to mince any words. I can't mince words anymore. The time is too late. The incompetence level is so great in this country right now, and the idiocy amongst the so-called educated classes has never been greater. I can't talk to anybody anymore. I can't. I can't even talk to the few people I've talked to. I don't have any words left for the average person. Even the average intelligent person, the average educated person, I don't have the time for it. I've never seen anything like it. The time is short. The phone number is 1-800-449-8255. If you care to comment on the Middle East is burning, I'll be right back.
Savage.
Well, there's a lot of jokes that you can tell, and I'm the kind of guy who has what used to be called gallows humor. I mean, things are horrible. Do you realize how many incidents are going on around the world, allegedly over a movie? They don't even have YouTube over there. You think these Arab youths, do you think they have YouTube? They don't even know what YouTube is. There's events all over the world now. London, 200 left-wing, 200 Arab fanatics who should be thrown out of the country are burning USA and Israeli flags. They're not thrown out. I'm not allowed into London because I dared say something about Islam. Mauritania, Casablanca, Morocco, Tunisia, Nigeria, Libya, Sudan, Kenya, Somalia, Yemen, Egypt, Sinai, Gaza Strip, Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, West Bank, Amman, Damascus, Sidon, Lebanon, Tripoli, Lebanon, Baghdad, Iraq, Kut, Iraq, Basra, Iraq, Kuwait City, Kuwait, Diraz, Bahrain, Doha, Qatar, Karachi, Pakistan, Lahore, Pakistan, Islamabad, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Jalalabad, Afghanistan, Rinaga, India, Kashmir, India, Hyderabad, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Jakarta, Indonesia. The world is burning. These are Obama's friends. Every one of these stops, every major city I just mentioned to you was part of his apology tour. In normal times, this would have been the end of his campaign. Do you know that? Which leads me to a question for the next hour. Do you think, given the media being worthless in America, given the fact that Jeffrey Immelt owns NBC and MSNBC, given the deep connections between the media and the Democrat administration, the D, who give them all sorts of incentives in the form of tax breaks and God knows what else in order to become just outlets for Obama's policies and positions with no criticism permitted. Given that the media is almost wholly owned by the Democrat machine and the pacifism and the weakness of Romney, see, I gave you some qualifier. Do you think that this will mark the end of Obama's campaign? Do you think this will elect Romney? Does Romney simply need to be quiet now in order to win? Think about it. 1-800-449-8255. 1-800-449-8255. MichaelSavage.com. So I'm going to talk about that. It's a very important question. How does it affect the election? In normal times, it would be the end of Obama. You know, the campaign's over. Finished. Finished. If we had a strong Republican who got up and dignified, strong, you want to say Reagan. Okay, Eisenhower, you want to go way back, no one knows him anymore. Say a thing like that. That when I'm president, we will not let American ambassadors be killed without killing the enemy. We'll find them and we'll kill them within 24 hours. We'll blow up the training camp. Whatever. Make a statement that lets the world know we're still in, there's still a sheriff in town. That's all he has to say. Show some toughness. But, okay, so given all of these problems, do you think Romney's going to win now as a direct result of this? Now, there are rumors that are unconfirmed that all of this was sparked not so much by an anti-Muhammad film on the internet, but by the fact that KFC cut back on the number of wings they were putting into a family box in wherever they burnt the KFC. And we also heard that the Arby's was burned in again, unconfirmed, that they burnt the Arby's to the ground because they cut back. They went from a third to a quarter of a pounder. And they didn't serve them pita. They served them white bread. That's what really sparked it and triggered it. It showed cultural insensitivity in that they were serving the hamburgers on buns, white bread buns. How American, as opposed to pita. And, of course, when you cut back on a wing here and a wing there, here a wing, there a wing, everywhere a wing, that's enough to trigger it. That sparked everything. I mean, these young men are hungry after all these years of protest. They don't do anything. They don't have jobs. They have nothing to do all day but run around with BlackBerry. Where do they get the BlackBerries from? And cell phones. They have no jobs. They do nothing. All they do is burn and mutilate, beat up their wives or girlfriends. They have nothing in their life but hate. What do they do all day? What in the world? What are we doing there? Why are we there? Didn't you see Lawrence of Arabia with Peter O'Toole? Haven't you read your history? Haven't you read your poetry? Don't you understand that the Arab mobs have always been Arab mobs? They're not living in this century. They're not living in the last century. They're not living in the 18th century. They didn't go through the Age of Reason. They haven't gone through the Middle Ages. They're living somewhere in the 11th century. What world are you living in? Liberals, please wake up. What has to happen for you to understand that it's time to pull out from the Middle East and let them have it? You say, but we need their oil. No, we don't need their oil. We actually don't need their oil. We don't really need their oil. Open up the Keystone XL pipeline. Start drilling off the coast of California and Alaska. We don't need them. Build new refineries. Pump oil from Mexico. No, we don't need them. We really don't need them at all. It's a myth. Why did Obama block the Keystone pipeline when we're starved for oil? Why is Romney saying nothing about the Keystone pipeline? I mean, that's a given. That's a slam dunk. That's an easy criticism. Why is he saying nothing? Because his advisors voted for Obama, and half of his advisors are still Obama supporters, and whatever his name is, Romney and his sons, are apparently so naive they don't even know this. I know it. How come they don't know it?
7.